There we go. You can hear, people online, you can hear me?
Yes.
Woo, okay. Well, welcome. I'm glad we skipped the story. We skipped. Yikes. Aryeh Lev Stollman. And he's done a lot of short story books. And I'm sorry, what?
I read the wrong thing.
Oh, come on.
No, I read.
Oh, that thing that's so hard.
Epicor, yes.
Yes.
Oh,
Look,
yeah.
if that was on my list, I mean, it was on the
Right.
original list.
You gotta read the emails.
I know, but we've been out of town, so
Yeah.
it probably went right by.
Right.
Oh,
So
no
we're-
wonder
that's
you're
why.
so off.
That's why.
That's why we had, I couldn't understand.
I can me neither.
All right, Mary, did you like that story? I found it really, we looked at it, we said it's too hard to read. Physically.
Yeah, too hard to physically, but the other part of it
Yeah.
is that there are so many references. You really have to be a Tomat.
A Talmudic scholar.
Exactly, there's no way. And when you look up his references,
Yeah.
they go into philosophy and, I mean, this stuff.
I looked at it, said, never
So when you
mind.
said you were looking things up, I thought, it's not that much. Okay, let's talk about Aryeh Lev Stollman. This is what he looks like. So, he, I think he's a youngish guy. I'm gonna read about him in a minute here. So he, his first novel, The Far Euphrates, is an American Library Association notable book of 1977. So he's obviously been at this. His second novel, The Illuminated Soul, is a winner of Hadassah Magazine's 2003 Harold U. Ribelow Prize. And his fiction has appeared in A Story, American Short Fiction, the Yale Review, and so on and so forth. He's a neurologist at the Mount Sinai Medical Center in New York City. So that's a little bit about him. And I think we can see that coming through in this story of Mr. Mitrochrondria. So why do you think they named it Mr. Mitrochrondria? Why is that the title?
This is about the boy and he was
Yeah.
at this project and it's kind of, I thought, after I finished it.
Yeah.
It was centered around his faith in reality. I think it's time for the mother to also.
When you say his, you mean the narrator, the author, or
The
Adar?
boy.
Adar.
And I think it's time for the mother to also, her chronicles were just, in my opinion, a way to escape.
Oh, wait, yeah, the Ichabod,
Mm-hmm.
Ichabod, right. Well, I first of all, I thought it was interesting that she named, one kid Tishrei and one kid Adar. Listen, in Israel, the Hebrew names are, every biblical character, that's mentioned. There's a few that they, you don't see anyone named Haman or, there's a lot of Mordechai's, a lot of Esther's, and Adar, that's the month we're in now. And Adar, so at the beginning of the month, you have Rosh Chodesh, and when you come into Adar, it's like, it's Adar, be happy. Because it's Purim and it's, Freilich. I leave for Israel in 10 days. So we are not meeting again. We're not meeting again until the first week in April. And people are talking about what's Purim going to be in Israel. Will people be able to celebrate? Will people be able to gather? I think there's a security. Yeah. Okay. Just turn it off. So I thought that, were you surprised? Yes, go ahead.
To me, I was surprised to find, I don't think I'm ruining it for anyone, that the brother's dead. When on the page of the story, the father says, Kayla, I have faith, but it's not an antidote to reality. I thought, boy, reality, we're getting reality here.
Yeah.
No, we're not getting reality
No.
here.
So who was, I mean, weren't you surprised at the end?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Total, it reminded me of that movie, The Sixth Sense.
Yes.
Then I went back to see, who did Tishrei talk to?
me too. I wrote
He
that
only,
down.
Everybody goes back to.
I-
you
I
have to
wrote
go
you
back.
have to like, wait, what did I miss?
What references
What
to
did
him?
I
Right,
get?
and he only talked to Adar.
You only talk to a doctor,
Right.
never talk, yeah.
And if we watched a movie of this, I bet that he'd be in the same t-shirt the whole time.
Yeah.
Like The Sixth Sense was, you know, they keep them in the same clothes to give you kind of a hint. So, you know, I like that twist at the end. And, you know, I just thought that was fascinating. Sue, well,
Well, one of the things that I was focusing on was the behavior of the mother.
Mhm.
And I kept wondering, before I knew that she had lost a son, I thought, what is making this woman so crazy? And now we know.
now we know.
She really couldn't deal with the loss of a child,
No.
which anybody who has gone through that certainly understands. And it's a terrible loss. And she was imagining, you know, the flowers as her babies and the locusts. And I mean, she was really kind of off her rocker.
But again, as you go back with the knowledge that Tishrei's dead, and you go back and read it, you can, at least you have more Rahmanis for
Right,
her
right,
craziness.
right, yeah.
Sandy,
I just wondered, what did Tishrei die from, or how did they lose him?
I don't think it says. Yeah. I think it's the idea of losing a child. You know, I have one friend in particular who lost a child, and you know, I'm not talking about stillborn baby or you know, child who you know has grown up and so on and so forth. And you know, their families never really the same. I don't think. That's my personal opinion. Yeah.
I actually thought, when I read it the second time after I realized it, they all were affected. It wasn't
Yes.
just the mother,
No.
the father and the brother
Yes.
were definitely affected, and you recognize their loss when you go back to read it.
Yes. Yes. You just look at it through different.
Yeah.
You look at it through really different eyes. The movie The Sixth Sense was with Bruce Willis and if you watch that a second time, it was a scary movie. I don't know. But you can see that Bruce Willis is always in the same clothes and people are yelling at him but not at him. And so and that's what this reminds me of. I think the parents are in a little bit of a better place at the end. I mean, because Adar was sick, but you know, he came out of it and you know, he
Planted new flowers.
yes, right. He received a letter from the National Science Institute. I mean, all of that is very you know, it's very rewarding for the family. Yes, go ahead.
I was thinking also with the name, it's telling you to dig deeper. What the overall Mr. Mitrochrondria, of course he wasn't fine, but what is Mitrochrondria inside?
Yeah.
And it's telling you dig to what's inside.
Yeah.
It's mitochondria is really important because it collects the dead matter of your cells. It is the garbage can, okay? So that your genes work correctly, then you get the right, chemicals in your body. A lot of diseases are caused by the mitochondria not working correctly, and then what it does is it
Right.
poisons different parts of your body, whether it's your brain, whatever it is. But definitely, it's basically a cleaning mechanism of cleaning out the poisons in your body.
And that's what
And
they
that's,
have to do.
and that's, so this is about, I haven't read it, but this is about poison, this is about.
Right. At the beginning, I thought for sure it was gonna be something more with the locusts. And, you know, I don't know what's gonna happen this summer because I think the cicadas are just every year now. The
Well, this is two
noise.
species
Yeah.
emerging at the same time,
Yeah.
which is unusual. But their locusts are different. Ours have red eyes. They
Yeah.
don't have red eyes.
Yeah. Sandy,
You know, when I sat in that room for the rabbi's class, he explained that where you sit is important because there are microphones in the ceiling. It would be nice to be able to hear all the women who are in person in the class. And
Oh.
some we can hear and some we can't. We can hear you perfectly,
Right.
Vanessa, because you're sitting under a speaker apparently.
I have a teaching, I'm not near a microphone. I'm as near as, you know, I think it's these black things, so.
Right, it's what's in the ceiling. The rabbi explained that. So if
Thank
people could sit near those black things, we
near-
could all, we at home could hear them then.
Right, they're gonna talk louder. I want to talk a little bit about Aryeh Lev Stollman. At the intersection of family, faith, and science, Stollman's Jewish protagonists find urgent moral dilemmas. This probing, intellectually acute story collection by the author of The Illuminated Soul is set in Israel, Canada, and the US. And writers and scientists figure prominently. In Mr. Mitochondria, a nuclear research in Beersheba, Israel, considers the impact of a plague of locusts on both his work and family, as he attempts to come to terms with the possibility that his child could die from the protective pesticide spraying. And I think, again, living in 2024, there's a real push and pull with the pesticides. Nobody likes mosquitoes, but spraying up at Asrui for probably the past 10 years, we have this very heavy mosquito spraying. And one of the directors jokingly said, you know, our grandchildren might have two heads,
Right.
but we're not gonna have any mosquitoes. And so, you know, where do we draw the line between, you know, pesticides and our food, our everything being processed? I'm not sure. And I don't know if you can spray for cicadias or anything like that. I don't think we have locusts here, do we?
I think locusts are cicada.
Okay, so it's the same thing then, yeah.
Don't.
All right, I'll Google it later.
Ugh.
We'll see what the what. So I do think this story is an interesting, melding of the science and the Jewish. Yeah. And then, of course, you know, when we hear locusts, we're going into that time of year with Passover. You know, I also think of that. And, you know, what does that look like? What did it look like, I should say? Almost all the stories because this is in a book of hit stories. Almost all the stories have these features. The characters are Jews, most often practicing very conservative and traditional Jews, but at times not. Even a few seem to be Jewish atheists, which I'm not sure about this family, although by naming their kids Adar and Tishrei, that I think puts them into the
What month is Tishrei?
Rosh Hashanah, the first.
Oh, so we have Passover.
Yeah, right. And Passover used to be a new year. Passover is in the month of Nisan, and that used to be the new year. But Adar is the month of Purim. So there used to be 2 new years, and anyway.
And this year there are 2 Adars.
What?
This year there are 2 Adars.
There are 2 Adars, and that's why everything is gonna be so late next year. Yeah, Adar Sheni. Mhm. I really have to. Oh, here. Let me put chat up. Merle says that the story explores different ways of dealing with grief. Who is the narrator? I'm not sure who the narrator is. Merle, who do you think the narrator is?
I think it's Tishrei.
Oh,
I thought it was Tishrei, and then at the end, the very last page, it's Adar.
I actually thought it was Adar.
I thought it was Tishrei.
You thought it was Tishrei?
Yeah, I did, because
Hmm.
that's because of the reality concept.
Oh,
So
yeah.
I thought for sure Tishrei was telling us the story, because we were seeing all the other players.
Yeah.
So, and at the end, then I agree with you. Then
Yeah.
you say to yourself, well, wait a
Wait a
second,
minute.
then Tishrei was talking.
Because
That's not
mother
right.
and
Right,
father
right.
stayed overnight in the hospital with their dog. Who
Right.
else could it have been but Tishba?
Right. Merle.
As he had the cake, and his arm was outstretched, it seemed to transfer from Tishrei to Adar, and then Adar is speaking.
Okay.
And it was a little confusing, but I think that's what happened.
Merle.
Well, I thought the narrator was Tishrei, but I thought it was also not just dealing with grief, but dealing with a crisis, like the way they faced the fact that the locusts were coming. Like we're about to face something similar, but cicadas are different. They're not as dangerous. They can't destroy a whole crop the same way locusts can. And I think that the father was the most calm in general. The fact that he said to his wife, I will replant everything for you. So I thought the father was really an important cohesive force in the family for logic. The mother was completely escaping, just a total escapist. And the little boy Adar was nervous and frightened by the whole experience. And that by the end, he seemed calmer and didn't need to talk to his brother anymore. So I thought it had a very nice, satisfying ending.
They had lost a lot
agreed.
more than crops with the loss of a child.
Right.
If
Yes.
They could get through this, they lost a child.
Right. Yeah, and I think seeing Adar lose Tishrei, and we see that, you know, a lot of kids have invisible friends. And I know my son had an invisible friend, and his name was Milo, and he wrote on the walls. Milo was very naughty, very, very naughty. And I'm like, who did that? And he's like, I said, Ethan, there's you crayon. He goes, no, I didn't do that. Milo did it. Like, what? Anyway, yeah.
I'll just say, to me, that was a very painful sentence, because one of my grandsons has not slept since his father died. So when he doesn't sleep through the night, he's 13.
Yeah.
And this said, look at me, watch me until I fall asleep. I started to sob.
Yeah.
I was sobbing, because loss is loss. And when you're young, loss is.
Yeah.
I just, everything this man wrote, I thought was beautiful.
Yeah.
I loved how he wrote.
As I prepare for my trip for Israel, I just keep thinking of all the loss.
Yeah.
And it's, I think there's a lot of trauma here. I think there's a lot of trauma in Israel. And I think it's going to be a hard trip, because we're going to the Nova Musical Festival where it was. And I yeah.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
Are you going on a mission?
Yeah. On a mission. Oh, you know what, Alice, you had your hand up.
Yeah, yeah, well, I was thinking, I'm wondering if Tishrei died before they went to Israel. The only reason I'm saying that, well, maybe I'm gonna contradict myself now, but at the bottom of 513, it's talking about their move from Canada to Israel. And of course, the father, he had a very important, prestigious job, and he was going to be able to continue doing his, scientific research. So I think the move probably wasn't as traumatic for him, but the mom, I don't know I'm not sure. She probably was writing when she was in Toronto also, but it says that, she started that book. It was like the opposite of living in the desert. It was like full of all these, exotic, lush plants. And it says it was a good thing that I became so inspired to write my trilogy, because otherwise I would have gone crazy. So I think even, I think the move was also traumatic. Again, I don't know if that's emphasizing that she had already lost her son. And that, if that's the case, moving from a place where he had died to another place would be even harder. I don't know. It's just one idea. And I agree with what everybody was saying about, I wasn't sure who the narrator was, but in looking at it again, it seems like it is Tishrei, because the narrator talks about Adar, doing this and Adar doing that. So it seems like it's somebody besides Adar. It's not saying I did this and I did that.
Abby also asked, do we know when Tishrei died? Could it have been before Adar was born? I don't think so, because Adar talks to Tishrei. Now, I guess
They have a relationship, it would seem.
Yeah.
right.
yeah.
I mean, I know, again, I'm thinking about a specific family, one of the kids was very young, and they know that, that the other brother, died, but I still think, I think Tishrei and Adar had a relationship. Terry.
I was struck by, I looked up mitochondria, and I was struck by the fact that the DNA of the mitochondria is through the mother.
That's what it says.
And so, or maybe it said that in the story. So I feel there's this connection between the mother and Adar, and maybe something about the way they see the world, and as opposed to the father, that they're more nervous and they're more afraid of certain things. And then in the end, I'm sorry, I don't have the book with me because I'm out of town. I'm on a Kindle, but it sounds like at the very end, when it says the two parents spoke to him and said they were so proud of him, they spoke in literally the same voice. So that kind of struck me. Was there a shift in the way they were treating him? Did he feel that? I mean, I kind of would want to grapple with that if people have ideas.
Well, it says at the end, that's on page 520, and that Tishrei would have been proud of him. Proud of you, father said. And Adar said, smiling, Adar smiled, really he would, of course he would.
Yeah.
Do the honors as your cake. I don't know.
By the way, the mitochondria reference is on 514. It is mother.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think there's a lot of unanswered questions about Tishrei, how he died, when he died, what happened. And so, I don't know, Terry, if that that, I'm not sure what your question is. Like,
The fact that didn't it say something to the effect that both of his parents in one voice said that they were proud of him,
Mhm.
as opposed to them kind of having different kinds of points of view? And then it's almost like as he became able to express himself, and he was at that point the narrator, and Tishrei, he no longer needed to talk to his dead brother. It was at that point that they both spoke to him in one voice saying, I'm proud of you. I feel like there's a connection there. That's what I'm saying.
and right before that, and on 520, I am really lucky I got better from all that nerve poison. So maybe they thought the locust stuff, and I don't know if that's what killed Tishrei. He said one night at bedtime, I could have died or been paralyzed. It's still in my system, but I adjusted. You never really get rid of it completely, Tishrei. That's the scary part. You could die at any. And I think that obviously that's what's on Adar's mind, because his brother died and he could die. Beverly. Wait a minute. And go.
Yeah, I felt that the last 2 pages, 520 and 21, all of a sudden, everything seemed perfect. It felt a little squished together. The plants were being replanted. The paralysis was gone. He won the prize. The parents were thrilled. The end. I felt that it was, I mean, I'm happy with the ending, but the beautiful writing and the beauty of the story seemed a little, I don't know what a good word, squished together at the end. And I didn't like that part. I mean, I liked the niceness about it, but I didn't like the way that it ended. So everything so packaged and abrupt.
Well, the easy answer is it's a short story.
I know.
Meryl, go ahead.
I thought there were some things that led up to the end, though. I thought, well, I asked the question, how does Adar react to being called a prodigy? I think at first he felt so unworthy. He had written a paper, he had submitted it, but he didn't know, is he going to win? And they kept saying to him, his father said it was a brilliant paper and that he was a prodigy. And the mother didn't like that so much. And then she saw the boy's reaction when she argued with her husband about the word prodigy. And she said, well, it was prodigious work. And then he felt a little better. But I don't think children feel worthy of comments like that until they know the result. And when he finally won, he did feel worthy. And they said, Tishrei would be proud of you. We're all proud of you. And then he felt better. But I think you have to be very careful how you tell children, oh, you're gifted or you're a prodigy. It really can affect them in a negative way too.
Yeah, well, I agree with you. Janice.
I wonder.
Real loud.
Yes, everything was so secret about what he did in the labs.
The dad?
Yes, I wonder if the author ever let down what his projects were in real life.
Oh,
It's such a secret in
yeah.
here. It seems to me he might have been working on things that were not for publication.
That he was working on things not for publication. The only thing that I can respond to that, and then Abby, I'll get to you, is that this is from if Tishrei is the narrator and then they don't understand. Do you know what I mean? My dad, even if he had said, this is what I'm working on, I don't know that they can.
But they made a point of saying that
that he did.
talk about.
Go and talk about it.
It's not a tourist place.
Right.
Science, you can go where he works is private.
Right.
It was a nuclear facility.
Right. I mean,
Magnetic.
right.
Whatever.
If anyone saw the play Golda's Balcony, it was about Golda Meir hearing about the work on the nuclear bomb, and it's in Dimona, which is in the Negev, which is near Beersheba, but it's not Beersheba. Now, if they had said he worked in Dimona, that means he worked, you know, to work on the bomb. So it is down in the south, and that's, you know, that could absolutely be. Evie, then Alice. Wait. And go. I unmuted you.
Okay. At first, when I was kind of in my voice, in my head, hearing the father calling him a prodigy, I almost heard it as sarcastic and kind of like a little bit of teasing, and almost feeling that the son Adar had to feel the pressure to kind of prove himself and work harder and harder and harder. I felt that he didn't take his father's seriously as a compliment, more as a and not a pressure, just kind of a almost jesting. But I think I changed my mind as I continued, you know, when I read the part about one voice.
Right.
The last appearance, then, you know, all of a sudden kind of turned the corner and said, yeah, you know, he really is a brilliant kid. You know, I can almost see, you know, I never played the piano, but a parent kind of prodding a child who's a piano player and comparing him to all these pianists. So maybe I just, you know, misinterpreted that totally, which could very well be.
I keep thinking about, you know, what Merle said, that, you know, kids can take that positive and negative.
Right.
And a lot of pressure. Although having, you know, worked with children and their parents, you know, we have a lot of gifted children here, and I don't know. It usually works the other way. And Alice.
Yeah, I think it was Merle who said, you know, about talking about how the different characters handled grief. And at the beginning, you know, when Adar's drawing all these plants, it's on the first page. It says, so when they get killed, we can remember them. I'm assuming that his parents said things about remembering Tishrei. And then at the end of that paragraph, it says, see, Tishrei, Adar said, they all have curly red hair like you. Now the mother also had curly red hair. So Tishrei looked more like the mother, and it said something on the next page on 512, at the bottom, it says, father took a long breath looking at us with his pale gray eyes, the eyes that Adar shared. Yeah. So Adar was more like his father. Think about it, scientific. He had that ability. And then the mother, it seems, is more creative. She's a writer. She likes all the plants and, you know, the color, the creativity. So, and I also feel the mom had her writing to escape into, the father had his work to escape into, and then Adar has this project on mitochondria. I think that, you know, gets him to escape into it. And also I feel there was a lot in the story about, just think how difficult it would be for Adar not having that older sibling anymore. He kind of has to absorb everything from the parents, you know, the good and the bad. And maybe there were like higher expectations for him because he was the only child left. So I think that might have been difficult for him. And maybe talking to his brother helped him get out some of those feelings.
Alice, I think you're absolutely right. The dynamics of any family change when a kid goes off to school. And again, you know, Ethan is much younger than my other two. And so when they were both in college and he was still at home, and we had like, he was in 8th grade. I'm like, well, we have a lot of together time. And he's like, yeah. Waiting for the other two to like take some of the pressure off of him. I also wanted to bring up about just the difference between the father and the mother. And on the bottom of page 511, the father was preoccupied with his whole grain cereal. And this is a whole paragraph. Eat exactly 55 grams, 180 calories, organically grown wheat and bulgur. I mean, who eats like this or weighs it out? And that I thought really characterized Dad. Yeah, Judy.
I have a question that I don't have an answer to, and I'm hoping everybody can pitch in. On 521,
On 521,
from that moment onward, I no longer needed to keep imagining my lost brother. I don't understand what the trigger was for that, because he outreached his hand. I mean, it's such an epiphany to have this happen. I don't see where the epiphany is.
Vanessa, we couldn't really hear what Judy was saying.
Judy said, why on 521 at the end? Why is there an epiphany there? Why is that, he's eating his cake, his right arm is outstretched, although he could remember his arm was paralyzed.
Yeah,
Mhm.
yeah, his arm was bad, but
And,
didn't seem that big a.
she doesn't think that seems a big enough changing point. Why?
He can stop imagining his brother, but I just think that's such a huge step.
Yeah. Why then? From that moment onward, I no longer needed to keep imagining my lost brother. They spoke in the same voice. Yeah. Again, Terry, this is that last thing. Janice,
And look,
real loud.
his being paralyzed was more of a mental
Oh,
paralyzed. And when he came out of that, he didn't need his brother anymore.
that's a very, now that he's not paralyzed.
And he had proven himself.
Yeah.
Prodigy that his parents kept saying, putting all that pressure on.
Oh, yeah, that's
He
right.
won. So he
He had
kind of
won.
went, okay, and I did it myself and not with Tishrei.
Yeah.
I didn't read it, but that seems to me maybe someone.
Mary, that is excellent. Not reading. Sandy.
I think, his illness and his paralysis seems almost like it was what we called years ago psychosomatic. And we don't know really, what he suffered from. Another point, we lost a grandchild and she died in our house. We never really, to this day, know exactly what she died from. She died in her sleep. And my daughter, for years, I don't know, she may still do it. She would go to the cemetery with children's books and she would read to her daughter. She just suffered so from the loss of that child that that's how she expressed it. Now, today, we all talk about the child as, how sweet and beautiful she was and smart, and that's all. But we talk about it in sort of a happy way that we had her, for that short time. But for a long time, she expressed her loss that way by talking to the child, reading to the child.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure there's been literature and medical studies. I mean, again, it's not the way of the world, for a parent to bury a child,
Right.
and especially a young child. And like again, I keep thinking about Israel, that all these young soldiers, they were in their 20s, and even the older
I'm sure
ones.
you have friends too that are talking to you about. I'm 77. These are people whose children's friends and are
Yes,
fighting
yes.
and had to leave their jobs
Yep.
and their homes, and the stories are. Imagine that the whole world doesn't appreciate that.
Yeah, it's terrible.
Vanessa, I don't know if everyone knows, my grandson's there. He spent 3 months in Gaza, and that's the first thing we thought about in the morning and the last thing we thought about at night. Then they sent him home, and they warned him, we're going to need you again in a couple weeks, be ready. And you'll probably go north this time. And that's where he is. He's up on the Syrian border. We have pictures of him at night with all these things on cameras on the top of his head. that can see in the dark, and they're watching the Syrian border that no one should come across secretly at night.
Yeah.
It's scary. I mean, this is my oldest grandson. He's 30,
Very sweet.
37, newlywed. And this is what's going on. Every family in Israel is going through this.
Agreed. Alice.
Yeah, I think another theme of the story is faith versus science. It's said pretty directly on page 512, right after the discussion of what the father is eating for breakfast. And the mother says, faith keeps our atoms from flying apart and has restored us in this wilderness. And then father says, Kayla, I have faith, but it's not an antidote to reality. So I mean, there's that tension between having faith in something and what the scientific reality is. And the other thing about at the very end, Adar no longer needed to keep imagining his brother. I think there was this validation of him from people outside of his family. So I think he kept thinking, oh, they're calling me a prodigy. They're giving me all these compliments because I'm the only child they have now. But then he submitted this project and it won. So I think there's that for all of them, that he really was a very smart young man.
Yeah.
And he was going to be able to, maybe it just released all of them from expectations that they had, after they lost their child, of how they should act.
So Evie has two good comments. One, she knew women named Adar. Again, in Israel, these non-gendered names are very, very popular. Tal, which means, like my daughter's name is Lee Tal, my dew, the dew on the ground. But Tal can be a man or a woman. Gal, which is a wave, a man or a woman. So there's a
Noah.
right.
Noah.
Now,
I
except
know.
in Hebrew, for a boy, it's Noach, and for a girl, it's Noah, N-O-A. But you're right, it's still. But the other thing that Evie said is, when I talked about the father's, breakfast, the only thing the father can control is his eating. I thought that is a great, and he was super controlled about it. I mean,
It's very scientific. though,
yeah,
too.
very
He's
scientific,
in the layout.
scientific.
Yeah.
He's measuring
Everything
everything
is
and
right
doing
in the
right,
layout.
the layout.
Joyce.
In spite of the differences between the parents, he being so scientific, she being so, and he being so cerebral, and she being so artistic and maybe creative and a little flighty, they seem to have a good relationship. And somehow they balanced one another, and they seem to agree on how they treated Adar.
Yes, yeah.
And I liked the balance that they had with him and how they prepared for the locusts.
Yeah.
And I felt that did we ever find out his first name? Did I miss it?
No.
We found, she was Layla,
Right.
but I don't know if we ever
Layla.
knew his name.
I don't know.
Interesting, I don't
Good
know,
luck.
he's referred to as father.
Yeah,
I like how they prepared for the locusts.
yeah,
It was a family project.
right.
And I liked that. I mean, I felt like they really were operating as a unit.
Yeah, and considering that they had just gone through a terrible loss, again, we have to look at that hindsight. That they could, listen, again, some people go through that terrible loss, cannot act as a family unit anymore. parents get divorced.
Go after one
They
another.
go after one another. I mean, so, I agree with you. I think that they seem to get along. Sue Ellen.
Well, one of the things that I find, oh, I just lost my place and I can't tell you, oh, here it is. I can't tell you what page it's on because I'm reading, on my iPad from the Kindle. So, but it's right after they describe the way the father measures all his food and talking about, and after the antidote to reality statement, it says, Adar looked less like a child than like a miniature man, a small, skinny replica of our father with the same smooth black hair and the same pale gray eyes. And the mother calls them alien eyes. And the fact that she looks at her son as an alien, I found that very kind of troubling and puzzling.
Although it's his father's eyes, maybe she looks at the father as an alien.
Yes, that's what I'm, that they were, even though they were devoted to one another, they were completely on different pages.
Right. And it gives you though, thank you for reading that because we have the curly redheads and then we have the straight black haired. I mean, the family really looked very different.
Right.
And, losing one of the redheads is,
And the other thing that I find puzzling about that is it's at that point that Tishrei is the narrator. But if Tishrei is dead, how can he be the narrator?
I don't.
Mr. Great.
It seems very strange.
Merle said, overcoming an illness, as Adar did, gave him hope and strength. He did not need Tishrei after that. I think that's a great comment because we can only imagine how he felt after his brother died. And he's old enough to remember it, but now he feels, maybe he thought he was an imposter, with the prodigy and the science fair. And now feels like I won the science fair. I overcame this paralysis and I'm okay. Okay, let me. Almost all the main characters are well known, often even fictionally world famous in their fields. I mean, Adar did have to live up to his dad. I mean, it'd be like, entering in, an art contest and one of your parents is a great artist, or you can take it to any of the professions. So maybe that was hard for him, even though he probably came to it naturally and would have somebody at home. Mary.
One of the things, when
Real
their
loud.
parents spoke in the same voice, he got acceptance from his mom because he's not like his mom. He's no longer more alien, or he had to live up to her concept of who his brother was with her, even though it's not stated that, I don't think it's stated that way, but I think that there's always that, I don't know, tension.
Yeah.
That he's not like her.
Right.
But she understood him when she spoke with the dad.
Interesting. Interesting. And of course maybe she being so creative was hard for Adar. We don't know what Tishrei's, what his strengths and weaknesses were, but, maybe he had more in common with the dad. This kind of even the playing field for them. Most of the central characters are in the arts or esoteric areas of science or academia scholarship. Well, yes, that's it. Virtually all are quite economically well off. I mean, I think that they were, look, they had a car and they were in Israel. Not everybody in Israel has a car, so that does signal a little something. In several of the stories, there are elements of the occult, such as a boy in the first story, that's Mr. Mitochondria, who carries on a brotherly life with his dead brother. Did you think that was, I don't know.
I think the mother more than.
Yeah. This reviewer was particularly taken with the tendency of each story to have several things going on in the characters' lives, rather than there being some central plot. We sort of following these characters in their everyday lives, experiencing with them moments of success, struggle, disappointment, and joy, almost always mixed into the ordinary flow of their lives. And they highly recommend the story. I mean, it was a lot going on, from the locusts to the science fair to the thing the mom created, and because at the beginning I thought for sure there's a big more with the locusts.
Yeah.
Because they went into such detail about that, and maybe that's to take away from. I think for me it was, Adar getting better and not having to have this relationship with his dead brother. Janice,
Well,
real life.
the locusts eat everything, and so does grief.
Oh,
Grief eats you up.
the locusts eat everything and grief eats you up. That's a beautiful metaphor. Really, really beautiful. And I'm going to be thinking about that when I see those cicadas this
Ooh.
summer.
And the
Wow.
poisoning the cicada
Oh, the pesticide.
affected the family. They had to close the windows. They were worried about it, whatever.
Right.
And of course, they're representing death too, because he watches, Adar watches the cicadas die.
Yes.
So there's a lot there you can unpack.
There is a lot there. I did think it was a beautifully written story, and it was a very satisfying end. I don't know.
It was actually fun. It was fun
Yeah.
to have that happen and then to go
Yes.
reread it. I
Yes.
enjoyed it. I
Yes.
enjoyed that.
Yeah, Judy enjoyed rereading it after she knew. The minute I read that sentence, your mind went into hyperdrive. Like,
Absolutely.
what did I miss? Where did I miss it? Who did he talk to? How did that happen? So, what book was I reading? It's always good, I think, when there's a twist, as long as nobody tells you. Tells you what it is.
Sorry about that.
No. Well, you'll, poor man.
I skimmed it when we talked. So.
Merle said, back to Evie's comment on control. How much can we ever control? Again, not much seems to be the comment. Merle.
I thought the mother's attempt to save her plants just using a piece of plastic over the plants when she knew there were going to be millions of locusts. I think that's the kind of thing people try to do, but she was never going to be able to control that. And nor could she control the fact that her child died, got sick and died, or had an accident and died. We don't know how he died. But I think there's that question throughout the story about how much can we control? And we keep trying, but we can't always control it.
It's interesting to see, when you think of that question of what people try to control. And again, I think back, sometimes when people call here or they complain, this is something they can control or they think they can control. And, other things are going, off crazy in their life, and, they're yelling at us about the ONEG, whatever's happening, because that's something that, in their mind, they can control.
So
So,
the father could eat specifically.
yes, the
because
father
he
could
could
eat
control it,
specifically.
And she could control her story.
She control, yes.
So, but you see the tension that arises from trying to control.
Yes. Here.
Lovely.
On that note, a couple of housekeeping. We're not meeting in 2 weeks. So we'll meet again on April 3rd. And the next story is The Argument by Rachel Kadish. Kadish, I'm not sure how she pronounces her name. Also, I leave and then I'll be in Israel, and I'm doing a virtual Sunday morning. It'll be at night for me. And it's the author, Rabbi Zoe Klein of and I'm gonna have to look it up. Wooden candle, spoon feather.
It's not Bell Book and Candle.
What? It's
It's
not.
not Bell Book and Candle.
No. Not. It's, oh, why it's not coming up. Oh, here it is. Candle, feathers, wooden spoon. And she's gonna be here on the morning of March 17th, and then we're discussing it on March 28th in the evening book club, but she should be really interesting. This Sunday is we're going to the Holocaust Museum. You need to be registered, and we're meeting you there. And you know, I won't be looking at my email as much, but I do look at my email when I'm away because the thought of coming back to 300 emails is more than I can bear.
Vanessa?
We have the Israel class today and next week. And then, you know,
Have a wonderful.
thank you. It was good, everyone.
Vanessa, before we go, I would like to recommend to everybody, I don't know how many of you are familiar with Barry Weiss, but she has a wonderful podcast. And the most recent one she did, I watched yesterday, I listened to it, and it's absolutely fabulous. And it's something we should all be listening to and listening to her advice and what she says about what's going on in the world and in Israel today, and how we as Jews can ought to be behaving and what we ought to be doing. It's really interesting.
I think you have to look up the Free Press.
Yeah,
Because
it's on
that's where-
YouTube.
Oh, it's on YouTube now.
It's on YouTube.
Barry Weiss.
Barry Weiss.
Yeah, honestly. Okay.
Honestly, with Barry Weiss, yes. But this is a particular interview she does. And it's on YouTube and it's wonderful.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, Sue. Bye.
Bye.
Thank you.